and it's a wish list that they have for the government. From an industry standpoint, what would you like the government to do more to help protect people from mobile scams? Here's your chance. Come.
Well, I can jump in first again, but I think what really the government can do is empower people. Eugene's hit on this a few times. How can we educate users? Previous panel as well. How can we educate users to be aware, but also give them the tools to educate themselves? So not only education about what a phishing scam looks like or other tools like that, but enabling them to be safe with the choices they make in the apps they download and the things they use. So I'll give you an example. If I'm looking for another way to protect myself, one of those security apps, I'm looking for an extra layer of protection from spam. There's today a very popular app with tens of millions of downloads on the store that purports to do that. It blocks bad phishing phone numbers, SMSs, things like that. But at the same time, it leaks all of your text messages to the log. So when I'm making a decision as an end user, if I only have the ability to look at the rating, for example, the 5-star rating, well, it's got 4.5 stars, I'm going to use it. But at the end of the day, I'm maybe making myself more insecure by adding that application to my device. So can we provide and empower users with a way to check the security of applications before they install them, whether they're side-loaded from the market? And this is something that Singaporeans are very lucky. Their government is very proactive in efforts like this, and we're working with the CSA in Singapore to provide a service like this.
If I could add on to that, actually, and it was a perfect plug, I swear, Chris, we didn't coordinate this at all, but this is why at Google, we spent a lot of time working with OWASP through the SAP Defense Alliance, because the Google Play Store is actually the first commercial app store to show apps that have an independent security review. So this is actually a great opportunity to hopefully educate users, and it's something we want to make more prominent as part of currently it's part of the data safety section in the store. But if you look, we just had a blog post talking about how we're doing this primarily starting with VPN apps. But I can see finance apps being another example. Of course, the problem there is finance apps, you use that bank, you have to use their app. So I think that's one example where government could help, of course, is dictating a set of requirements to certain app categories that are very sensitive in nature. The other thing, and this is really what Gert was talking about, I found it amazing what they're doing with secure DNS and basically saying use our DNS service. That's great for that country. But what would be even cooler is how do they do threat intel sharing with us so that we can put that into safe browsing, which is already installed in 5 billion endpoints, right? We could leverage that intelligence. And I think that's one thing that we're working on here with the Cybersecurity Agency, but we'd like to do this more broadly, is start to do more threat intelligence sharing with the governments, also with the banks, and be able to collaborate and gain from each other's insights and become more resilient together.
Yep. Casey, any thoughts?
I think, again, Christopher and Eugene brought up some real salient points around education. Just one other point I would add on education is, again, the genesis of a lot of these malice efforts, scams and otherwise, are originating at the mobile device, but most of them are hybrid attacks. They involve a lot of process that are outside of the mobile domain. It could be a phone call, it could be more analog in nature. So I think really, again, taking the time to fully work through what these things look like and how they're progressed, and then again, the speed of informing the public, I think, is key. The other thing I would say here is, and I think this is maybe antithesis to what a vendor would ask for, is I think I would like governments to set higher standards in terms of what the requirements are, because Christopher brought up that great example of buying a $50 phone off of Amazon. Part of this is there's a reason why it's $50. There has to be, I think, a higher set of standards that are set by governments and consistent standards that are set by governments globally. One of the things that I talked about on another panel is that as a vendor, we spend a lot of time, effort, and money on certifying for different government entities. But when we look at those regulations, they're very similar in nature. So rather than having redundancy, I would love to see, beyond just common criteria standards, a set of standards that start to be recognized as global standards that can be enforced a little bit more. But I'm all for higher standards in terms of requirements from the vendor as far as it relates to user privacy capability or others, because I think that's one way that we get better at this, because this is not going to slow down. These types of attacks, sophistication, the nature of it is going to get more sophisticated versus less sophisticated. So again, I think keeping a very high requirement is something that is I think good for the industry.
Yeah, I would like to add on as well. We can look at the privacy problem that's been tackled over the last 7 years, starting with EU introducing GDPR. No one was taking privacy really until they started enforcing regulations and enforcing fees for lack of compliance with those regulations. So, one thing aside from doing standards is tying those standards to some sort of penalty. If we tie back to that example of the Amazon device, there was no real repercussions for that manufacturer or for Amazon for hosting that device that had that issue. Essentially, the repercussion was lack of sale. They had to pull it from the listing, and they didn't get any proceeds from it anymore. But there's not really an incentive to stop them again, to take security seriously and stop that from happening again. Whether it's on the distributor, whether it's on the manufacturer, the component that was in the end vulnerable, that's a complex situation. But I think in order to really level it up and take it to that next level is standards, like KC said, and then tying those standards to some sort of fees and other regulations.